Hello, friends around the world, and welcome to the program. First program of the week, and I would like to begin with a quote from Ayn Rand. The hardest thing to explain is the glaringly evident which everybody has decided not to see. I'm afraid what that may be is division. Oh, we see division. Certainly we see division. Political division. Division between the races. Oh, no. Much more than that. There's division in the security services. There's division in the judicial system. I don't mean just the big courts. I mean even the little courts. Division in the schools. Division everywhere. Right? It's linguistics contributing to it largely. And Google is one of the prime drivers. Is it possible that in the same way that a catchphrase or a joke it was completely unknown 2 days ago, and now it seems everybody in the country is talking about it. It's on commercials, it's on these so-called comedy, late-night television shows all over. Where did it come from? It's a good question, isn't it? And I'm a little troubled by what's going on in alternative media right now. A lot of wild speculation about, oh, this one's a pedophile, that one's a child trafficker, this one's a child rapist, child. These are linguistics. Coupled with this seething desire to achieve relevance. Lots of YouTube clicks. Do you see the contradiction that I'm alluding to here? Why would you go on to a public platform and then complain if you get kicked off of it because you're telling the truth and you just want to tell the truth? But if it's contrary to the ideology of the people who provided the platform to begin with, well, you're going to get kicked off. So I implore my fellows in the alternative news business, this particular medium, to vet your facts very, very carefully. Yes, there are all sorts of threats out there, threats everywhere. Like the Arab-looking guy in The Man Who Would Be King with Sean Connery and Michael Caine. Enemies all around. Yes, but they're much closer than you think. They may even be nearer than your hands and feet. Because if you're not aware of how linguistics, the study of linguistics is the study of how words actually affect your mind. Not that you simply understand the sentence that's being spoken to you, but the words, the little phrases, 2, 3, 4-word phrases that stick in the mind and actually modify your behavior. What do? Do we just disconnect? I don't know. Like that joke, there was a cartoon up, and one little cartoon character says to the other, this is before the internet, right? One says to the other, there's a subject I'd like to learn more about. But it's before the internet. So the other one says, that's a damn shame. Well, we laugh because it's funny, but we laugh because it's true as well. Remember how rough before the internet really kicked off strong? Remember how tough it was just to get a library card? You remember the unbelievably harsh penalties for late return of a library book? You could even be subject to arrest. What's up with that? Why all of this tracking? You want to hear a good one? Now listen to this. This doesn't have anything to do with this country, or does it? Well, of course it does. This comes from phys, phys.org. Nanotechnology, physics, earth, astronomy and space, technology, chemistry, biology, and other sciences. I don't know who the author is. I can't see that it's been listed at all. Says, well, that's just a photograph. It says credit CCO public domain. Anyway, get this. 7 European consumer groups filed complaints against Google with national regulators today, accusing the internet giant of covertly tracking users' movements in violation of an EU regulation on data protection. Data protection. You are data. Everything you do is data. It's all data. The complaint cited a study by the Norwegian Consumer Council that concluded the internet giant used, quote, deceptive design and misleading information which results in users accepting to be constantly tracked, end quote. Council official Gro Metemurn charged that, quote, Google uses extremely detailed and comprehensive personal data without an appropriate judicial basis, and the data is acquired by means of manipulative techniques, end quote. Complaints against Google were filed in the Czech Republic, Greece, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Slovenia, and Sweden. They are based on the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, which took effect in May. Google is accused of tracking users' movements via its location history and web and app activity applications, which are built into all Google accounts. Quote, for users of mobile phones with Android operating systems such as Samsung and Huawei phones, this tracking is particularly difficult to avoid, the Norwegian Council noted. According to the internet site StatCounter, almost 70% of European mobile phones run on the Android system. Couple more quotes. Location data can reveal a lot about a person: real-time movements, frequently visited places, daily routines, interests, etc., the Norwegian complaint said. Constant location tracking, aggregation of location data over time can be used to build very detailed profiles of individuals and to infer religious beliefs, political leanings, and sexual orientation, among other things, it added. Monique Goyens, General Director of the European Consumer Organization, said, Google's data hunger is notorious, but the scale with which it deceives its users to track and monetize their every move is breathtaking. The situation is more than alarming. Smartphones are being used for spying on our every move. The Dutch organization Consumentenbond insisted that this tracking must stop. Google responded by saying that location history is turned off by default, and you can edit, delete, or pause it at any time. If it's on, it helps improve services like predicted traffic on your commute. If you pause it, we make clear that, depending on your individual phone and app settings, we might still collect and use location data to improve your Google experience. It's just like the jobs that Americans won't do. That's why we need all these Mexicans and Central Americans and anybody else that can sneak in here. But somehow they were getting done before, and somehow we managed to get from point A to point B, wherever point B is, without Google. There's this thing called a map, or asking for directions. I'm sick of this smartphone thing. I'm not kidding you. I believe that that damn thing is actually addictive. I believe that they are designed to be addictive, and I believe that 5G and 6G and 7G are going to evolve that device's ability to interface with your very brain. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again because I want everybody to at least hear it and consider it. If your brain runs on electrical impulses and your smartphone runs on electrical impulses, then combine that with the fact that you don't even have to have a physical connection between the charger and what's being charged anymore. No, it just charges over a magnetic field. You can see these devices at any wireless phone store, the one that starts with an A especially. They're the ones who offer Samsung smart TVs free under certain circumstances. Come on inside for details. That promotion didn't last long. Why? Because the word got out that these TVs, when this promotion was running, would absolutely spy on you even when their false off mode was engaged. Sure, I just turned the TV off. No, you think you did because the little red light is on or whatever, or maybe the little red light is off. On all the devices that we have, the red light comes on when it's off, which kind of makes sense. Red light, got to correct that, right? Yeah, don't do or say anything in front of the TV that you don't want stored on the cloud forever. What kind of nonsense is this? Why is this all right? Well, in my opinion, it's not all right. And I'm not going back to the dinosaur age of 1968 just to quote McGowan because I think it's cutesy. Patrick McGowan was an astounding genius. He really was. And he took quite a risk by producing The Prisoner. Oh, it's a period piece. But the concepts revealed within that series of 16 episodes, the 16th episode being a two-parter, so it's 17 programs, but 16 episodes. They're timeless. Power and control, hypocrisy, but it alluded to a future, much like Orwell and even Huxley did. Constant total surveillance, everything you do. Well, like linguistics. Yeah. Once you've heard the same phrase over and over and over and over and over, it's clear and present danger to our democracy, that sort of thing, over and over and over. It actually affects your mind. And so does this linguistic. You're being tracked continuously. Every move you make is tracked. You're being tracked. You're being recorded. Everything you say is being recorded. You're being captured on cameras all over the place, in the store, on the street, at the traffic light, everywhere. Before long, what happens? People stop caring. They justify this because they sense that they should care, but they don't care. They justify it with, I'm not doing anything wrong, so why should I care? Takes up too much RAM in my head to care. I've got other things to care about. Oh, it's my friend. Let me see. I text my friend. We are in a war. You talk about asymmetrical warfare. We are in the midst of an asymmetrical war. Our opinions, even our emotions, are shaped by remote control. AI is driving a lot of it. And AI cannot be trusted. It's artificial intelligence. It's not real intelligence. However, once it produces its version of linguistics, it subjects us to so much artificial intelligence. I think it's possible that our own intelligence could become artificial, meaning it's not intelligence at all. It's robotics. We're going to speak with a nice man. His name is Stefan Aarnnio with 2 A's. And it's really quite something. I write this book with great risk of peril and hatred toward the ideas in this book. Several of the ideas in this book are threatening to the reigning popular belief systems in the current Western world. However, what is popular is not always right, and what is right is not always popular. Right and wrong can be simplified to their basic tenets. If something is right and everyone did it, the world would be a better place. The converse is true as well. If something is wrong and everyone did it, the world would fall apart. In this book, Mr. Aarnnio writes, I will discuss right and wrong as per those definitions above. We live in a world of extreme tolerance today, and extreme tolerance is weakness. Tolerant societies throughout history are violently murdered by intolerant societies that are strong in their moral beliefs, values, and code. We live in a time when everyone has a voice through the internet and social media, and some of these voices scream so loudly that you cannot hear any reason coming through the constant noise. Hence my admonition toward practitioners of alternative media distribution. Arguments are made today on the basis of emotions and feelings instead of reason and sound logic. People are judged as good or bad based on how the masses feel about their ideas instead of on pure rational thought. We live in a world today where it is blasphemous, racist, sexist, homophobic, or any other number of labels to identify real problems in our Western world. We cannot even say certain words or criticize certain groups of people without getting hit with a label of racist, sexist, homophobic, or other hate label. I assure you there is no hate in this book, and I do not wish to be hated by others. What I will do is examine some of the problems in the Western world in a rational way, from a philosophical standpoint and removed from emotion. There was a time in ancient Greece when the warriors were philosophers. So the warriors were smart. Likewise, the philosophers were also warriors, so your philosophers were tough. Today, our warriors are dumb, and our philosophers are wimps. This book will study the nature of man and how he was meant to live, meant to be respected, and meant to fit into a functioning world. We live in a world today where the weak men, women, boys, children, and everything but strong men have taken over the power in society. In fact, to be a strong man these days is to walk on eggshells for fear of offending a group of minorities that has become an overwhelming majority. This strange shift in the balance of power has caused a gap in leadership and a hole that only a strong man can fill. Missing today are the good fathers who once presided over stable families. Fathers are important for raising good girls into good women and good boys into strong men. Missing today are the strong men who lead their communities, churches, sports teams, Cub Scouts, and other groups that need to be led by men to be examples for young men to follow. Missing today are the strong men who become mentors, fathers, business leaders, coaches, philanthropists, educators, and role models, and who serve as guideposts for others to follow. The world craves leadership from strong men in so many ways. But instead of filling the need with strong men, we settle for weak, effeminate men, cowards, men who look and sound good, but who have no substance. They're posers, fakes, and other imposters who look like men but act like boys. And then there's the title, The Case for Donald Trump as a Zeitgeist and Strong Men Throughout History. This is going to be quite good. I think it's overdue. I'm very, very happy that this man has written this book. We're going to get to know him a little bit and talk about what's behind his book. I understand it's actually quite a large book. But Stefan Aarnnio is quite a guy. He really is. Now, I must not be remiss in reminding you that there are a lot of new items in the Caravan to Midnight store, and they make wonderful and inexpensive holiday gifts. Yes, that's right. I'm hawking holiday gifts, but the most important holiday gift, in my opinion, is the gift of real information, not linguistically designed messages meant to affect your mind in a negative way. What's the negative way? Closing it. Closed mind cannot be reached. That's why people like Mark Dice have so much success when they go out and punk people into putting their signature and a birthday. Let me have just a signature and a birth date. Really? That's all? Why not the social security number and the name and address and driver's license number and everything else? All you need is a name and a birthday, a signature and a birthday. You can commit all sorts of nefarious things you want to do. Of course, he doesn't. Oh, but they're ready to get rid of the Bill of Rights because they think it's time to move America forward, support Hillary Clinton, move America forward. Forward into what is the question that's never asked and certainly never answered. We can answer it, though, can't we? Now, before we get into this thing about strong men with Stefan Aarnnio, I want you to hear this. This is from thefederalist.com, and it was written by Walt Heyer, H-E-Y-E-R. Mom addresses 6-year-old son as girl, threatens dad with losing his son for disagreeing. A Texas custody case splits a 6-year-old child's gender identity in two. And it's happening right here. Yep, a town that hosted the Kennedy assassination, about which nothing was said last week. I didn't hear anything about it, did you? And the famous Roe versus Wade trial that opened the door for countless millions of executions of unborn children. And that's all it is. It's murder. Well, is it a viable fetus? If the woman is pregnant, it's going to be a human being. It doesn't matter if it's a little black dot or if it actually looks like a child. It's going to be a child. Self-deluded stupidity. If you want to make that decision, go ahead. But don't look to me or anybody else to make you feel better about it. You do know how babies are caused, don't you? Well, except in the case of rape and incest. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of that going around. Millions upon tens of millions. No, people have been using this as a birth control technique for a long time now. Hey, everybody can do what they want, and everybody else can have their own opinion about it, right? But when it comes to shaping a society, how much of this can we really afford? How important to the society should certain individuals' happiness be? In some cases, it shouldn't be important at all. It's called accepting responsibility for the things that you do in your life. And if you can't do that, then what value are you to anyone, actually? Now get this. 6-year-old James is caught in a gender identity nightmare. Under his mom's care in Dallas, Texas, James obediently lives as a trans girl named Luna. But given the choice, when he's with Dad, he's all boy, his sex at birth. Notice this man had the intelligence to say his sex at birth, not his gender. In their divorce proceedings, the mother has charged the father with child abuse for not affirming James as transgender, has sought restraining orders against him, and is seeking to terminate his parental rights. She is also seeking to require him to pay for the child's visits to a transgender affirming therapist and transgender medical alterations, which may include hormonal sterilization starting at age 8. I learned of James's plight on a recent visit to Plano, Texas, where I spoke to teenagers about my own transgender story. I lived through a similar scenario when I was his age. I was cross-dressed for 2.5 years by my grandmother, who made a purple chiffon dress for me. Somewhat like James, my cross-dressing occurred under one adult's care. But away from grandma's, I was all boy with my mom and dad. Also, just like James, I found my way into the office of a gender therapist who quickly started me toward transition. When his mother, a pediatrician, took James for counseling, she chose a gender transition therapist who diagnosed him with gender dysphoria, a mental conflict between physical sex and perceived gender. James's precious young life hinges purely on the diagnosis of gender dysphoria by a therapist who wraps herself in rainbow colors, affirms the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and dismisses evidence to the contrary. Remove the rainbow from James's diagnosis, and it crumbles under the weight of the criteria for the diagnosis of gender dysphoria. The diagnosis is critical because labeling a child with gender dysphoria can trigger a series of physical and mental consequences for the child and has legal ramifications in the ongoing custody case. Get it wrong, and young James's life is irrevocably harmed. James does not fit the gender dysphoria criteria. The criteria for a diagnosis of childhood gender dysphoria are that a child be persistent, consistent, and insistent about being the opposite sex. James's mom is all in on the diagnosis of gender dysphoria and assisting with social transition. She used the name Luna to enroll him as a girl in the 1st grade and provides only female clothes. Meanwhile, Dad isn't seeing signs of gender dysphoria. In the father's home, James appears to be a normal boy, doesn't identify as a girl. He has a choice of boys' or girls' clothes there, but he chooses to dress as a boy. The fact that James changes gender identity depending on which parent is present makes the diagnosis of gender dysphoria both dubious and harmful. The transition therapist has observed that James is not consistent, insistent, or persistent in the desire to become Luna. For example, a dossier filed with the Dallas court says that under the skilled eyes of the therapist, the child was presented 2 pieces of paper, one with the word James and one with the word Luna, and asked to pick the name he preferred. When the appointment only included his mother, James selected Luna, the name and gender he uses at his mother's home and in his 1st grade classroom. When the appointment was only with his father, however, James pointed to the boy name James, not the girl name. The glaring disparity between a child's preferred identity when in the presence of one parent versus the other should cause a therapist to reassess perhaps nullify the diagnosis of gender dysphoria and terminate any steps toward transition. But in the case of James, this hasn't happened. When James is away from his mother, he consistently rejects the idea that he is Luna Girl or that he wants to be a girl. Because the court prohibits Dad from dressing James as a boy or from teaching him that he is a boy by sharing religious or science-based teachings on sexuality, Dad presents James with male and female clothing options, and James always chooses, even insists on, his boy clothes. Dad told me, quote, "James violently refuses to wear girls' clothes at my home," end quote. This is not a sign of gender dysphoria. Eyewitness accounts from friends corroborate Dad's observations of James preferring to be a boy. Bill Lovell, the senior pastor of Christ Church Carrollton, wrote, quote, "Based on the 3 occasions I've spent time with him, I'd say he acts and looks unmistakably like a healthy 6-year-old boy. I'm praying for James, an average 6-year-old boy, sweet-natured, intelligent, lovable, and at this point particularly vulnerable young man caught up in a titanic clash of worldviews." There's just a little bit more, and I want you to hear it. Ellen Grigsby shared in an email her observations after meeting James and his fraternal twin brother for the first time. Quote, "They were both all boy and were having a great time. Both boys were absolutely dressed as boys and behaving as boys," end quote. Sarah Scott is a family friend, a mother of 3 boys who frequently play with James and his brother. She and her husband are sensitive to allowing James to lead the way in gender choices such as names, pronouns, and clothing. I asked her the obvious question, "How do you know James does not want to be a girl?" Sarah responded in an email with several examples she's seen of James' desire to remain a boy. Right, and there they are. But they just confirmed that he wants to be a boy. James exhibits no desire to be Luna, the girl, except when he's with his mother. The boy's behavior offers a stinging rebuke of the diagnosis of gender dysphoria. This, by all accounts, is not true or clinically correct diagnosis of gender dysphoria. Yet the therapist stands by her diagnosis and continues to keep Luna on track to gender transition. But this is the worst part. Is this therapy or is this manipulation? This man writes, "Unlike James, I was an adult at the time of my diagnosis. Grandma was gone by then, but the therapist, like so many today, affirmed my cross-gender identity and guided me through gender transition. He provided access to hormones and surgery, and soon I had the full gender-affirming surgery and identified as Laura. I felt that my gender identity and biological sex were at odds. But what the therapist failed to consider were the other factors driving my desire to change gender, which needed to be addressed first. What this mom is doing to James looks very much like what my grandmother did to me by affirming me in the purple dress. My grandmother didn't intend to harm me, but her action destroyed my childhood and my family and consumed nearly 50 years of my life. James has no idea what he's in for or how his gender journey will play out, but with an incorrect diagnosis, it will be ugly. I became very concerned about James because he's not exhibiting the diagnostic attributes of gender dysphoria. His gender preferences are not consistent or inconsistent, but flip back and forth according to which parent is present. When James is permitted to relax around friends away from his mom, he seems natural and happy being a boy. If James truly had gender dysphoria, he would demand the proper pronouns, always dress as a girl, and insistently, persistently, and consistently claim to be a girl in all situations, not just with mom. Instead, friends say he's done the opposite. He has insisted on being a boy. It's time to consider that the boy is not transgender. This is from the Federalist. Mom dresses 6-year-old son as girl. You'll see it if you want to read more. And obviously, this next bullet point, misdiagnosing people has horrific consequences. Yeah. And if you don't go along with it, you're liable to wind up in court in front of a friendly judge, friendly to the prosecution of the dad who wants to keep his son a boy. And the next thing that'll happen is if the dad makes too many waves in court, then Child Protective Services will take the child away and the child will never be seen by either parent ever again. And isn't it interesting that so many dykes work for Child Protective Services? Yeah, I said dykes. They use it. I can use it. That's what we do here. We call them as we see it. And we based our reporting in facts. If we make a mistake, we come back and we say, hey, we screwed up big time on that. It doesn't happen very often. I can't remember it ever happening. I'll tell you what, though, I did have to back up on unalienable. But it yielded some good things. I said that before. There is inalienable. Those are rights that are God-given, but you can give them away if you want to. Well, this kid has unalienable rights. And between this freak of a therapist, this freak of a mother, and the freaks in the courts, his rights are becoming inalienable. Except for the possible caveat that he's not giving them away, his rights. They're just being taken. You will be a girl. This is probably going to come up more than once this week, but if you notice lately on TV, the hot chicks are all dancing over the latest chicken quesadilla or some other Bravo Sierra. The white guys, young white guys, all look like little hand-holding fairies. The macho guys, they're all men of color. Now, they all look gay as hell if you continue to just watch for a minute. That's not the point. The point is that the young men of color are supposed to be far more macho than these white drones back here. That's some more division. Division, division, division. So I'm going to conclude this segment the same way that I started it. People out there in media, don't be calling fake news to the networks and so forth and wind up being fake news yourself. Just don't do it. If it's your opinion, say it's your opinion, but don't throw it out there like it's news and it's fact. The human being is made to be led, and the human being will be led by something. Make sure that you don't mislead. The human being is also made to worship. What a concerted effort there has been to restrain worship. Oh, but not of Islam, of Christianity. Why? Because it is real. Oh, Islam is too, but it has nothing to do with a deity. It has everything to do with power and control. To me, it is utterly and completely antichrist, and it has a murderous record through the centuries to substantiate my opinion. Without God, we are lost. And I'm talking about the God of the Bible. Our Father in heaven. Without that, this country is gone, and the world will shortly thereafter follow. One more thing. This caravan. This week, we're going to be talking with some people who know about no-go zones. How the police are afraid to go into these areas. The weaponry that's stockpiled in those areas. Now, let's see. If you can get enough fentanyl into this country to kill every man, woman, and child in it, how hard do we think it would be to get a few weapons in here? Now, what you're going to see in the not-too-distant future, unless Mr. Trump can stop this caravan, these people, you see them in these videos just flooding in here like ants. Well, the next thing that's going to happen, remember those little Vietnams I talked about before? Hundreds of little Vietnams all over the country. Yeah, insurgency, conflict, right? If you can buy grenades, full automatic rifles for not that much money, if you can get enough fentanyl into this country to kill every man, woman, and child in this country, Weapons can't be that much of a stretch. Now, the only outfit that's saying that all this stuff about dropping cases of AKs and rifles and things like that up in Chicago's South Side neighborhoods, it's a left-leaning outfit called Quora. They're the only ones so far that have said anything about it. I've had a random Uber driver tell me that that's absolutely true. Well, when these people who come flooding across the border like ants all congregate in these areas, then the crime gets going and the pecking order is established and all that. Well, what happens then? If you've got MS-13 or you got some jihadis or whatever you've got, whoever's willing to pull a trigger, you can put any kind of a name on them that you want to. What would happen if a couple of dozen of those things happened in cities all across this country on the same day, much in the same way that the Caravan marchers all got together on the same day and decided to go north? Then you'll see those little Vietnams all over. And then, of course, when these people start getting shot, which they most assuredly will, these perpetrators of violence, oh, then the cries of racism will come up. We're in a very, very strange time. So, just to recapitulate, beware of division. It is everywhere. Do not be woefully remiss in your preparedness. Do not get comfortable with the loss of your privacy, and take responsibility for what you say and do, and then release into the public sphere, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else. It's really time to take responsibility for our actions. The only problem is, who's going to hold you responsible? If you want to do some freakish thing like dress your boy as a girl, oh, the courts and the therapists are going to uphold that. But what if you're actually trying to speak the truth? What if you're actually trying to do what is, in fact, as it has been proven through the centuries, the right thing? What happens then? When everything is fighting against your doing that, you'll be censored. Your channel will be banned. Or you'll be sued. Or whatever it might be. Who's going to come to your aid? Other people who take responsibility for their actions. And because they take responsibility for them, what this really means is they ask themselves the question, am I putting myself or others at risk with information which may or may not be true? If they can make that assessment and then decide, maybe it's better if I don't release this information just yet. Nobody wants to be first. Everybody wants to be next. That's an old Texas expression. It's not necessarily true. Far too many people want to be first, and they really don't much care how they get to the pole position and stay there as they cross the finish line of relevance. Now, let us enjoy a beautiful musical interlude, calm down a little bit, and then let's get jacked up some more. You know, hard times make strong men. Stefan Aarnnio is next.